Heart of Care Episode 6. The Systemic Destruction of Morality, Education, and Empathy, a Burmese Reflection. In today's episode, we explore what happens when a country loses not just its democracy, but its moral compass. We'll talk about tyranny, survival, silence, and the long road back to empathy. But first we begin with a girl at an ice cream truck. It was just after lunch, one of those rare moments between ward rounds and paperwork where the hospital actually feels still. I sat on a bench near the park next to the hospital. The sun was kind. The breeze carried the scent of eucalyptus and coffee from the nearby kiosk. Across the lawn, the familiar ice cream truck had drawn its usual crowd, parents tired but smiling, kids clutching coins, eyes wide with anticipation. Next to me was Dr. Jim, one of the hospital psychiatrists, someone I always enjoy bumping into. We often share quiet reflections like this when the world slows down just enough. As we talked, our eyes were drawn to the line forming at the truck. A little girl, maybe 8, maybe 9, stood at the front, coin in hand. Just behind her, a boy in a wheelchair, his older sister gently pushing him forward. The girl glanced back, paused, and stepped aside. No one told her to. No adult prompted her. She simply saw, understood, and made space. "She gets it," Dr. Jim whispered beside me. I turned. "Gets what?" "Equity," he said. "Not just equality." Equity. And in that moment, it landed for me too. Equality is standing in the same line. Equity is knowing when someone else needs to be let through. This little girl, with no law book, no policy guide, no politics, did what so many leaders fail to do. She chose compassion over entitlement. Quietly, instinctively, we sat in silence for a while, watching the boy take his turn. No fuss, no drama, just dignity. And in that small act, I felt something stir in me, something I hadn't felt in a long time. A reminder of the world we're capable of creating, and of the one we've allowed to fall apart. Because I come from a place where cues were broken with bribes, where fairness was bought, and where silence was survival. A place called Burma. I was born in 1988, the same year the streets of Burma were soaked in blood. That year, students and citizens rose up in what became known as the 88 Uprising, demanding democracy and an end to decades of military rule. The regime responded with bullets. Thousands were killed. The hopes of a nation were silenced under tanks and terror. I was born into tyranny. I grew up in a country where truth was dangerous and obedience was survival. For over 2 decades, the military regime didn't just suppress us, they reshaped us. They destroyed not only our political freedoms, but our morals, our education, and our sense of empathy. We were taught to keep our heads down, to bribe for what should have been ours by right. A seat in a classroom, a license, a government form. My mother sent gifts to teachers just so I could receive basic care and attention. If you wanted to skip a queue, get something processed, or avoid trouble, you paid someone off. Corruption wasn't the exception. It was the system. We were told never to speak up, never to argue with elders, even if they were wrong, never to talk about politics, never to make enemies. If it doesn't concern you, stay quiet. That wasn't just survival advice. It became a twisted moral compass, passed down from parents to children, reinforced by fear. We lived in poverty, not because our country was poor, but because our rulers kept us that way. A driver could earn 4 times more than a doctor. Business success depended not on talent, but connections to generals and cronies. Our country was rich in natural gas, oil, jade, gems, copper, timber, and rare earths, yet half my childhood in the capital was spent without electricity. I studied by candlelight. Diesel generators were a luxury. And funnily enough, we sold electricity to our neighbors, while our own children fell asleep in darkness. In this system, education was degraded, and morality was distorted. We learned to respect power, not principles. We admired survival, not sacrifice. Aung San Suu Kyi, the daughter of independence hero General Aung San, rose as a beacon of hope. But the military kept her under house arrest for nearly 15 years. In 2010, after global pressure and sanctions, The regime held tightly controlled elections. They promised reform. But behind the scenes, they wrote a constitution that guaranteed them 25% of seats in parliament, unelected, that gave them effective veto power over any constitutional change. The president couldn't choose the defense, home affairs, or border affairs ministers. These key ministries, and all security forces, remained firmly under military control. Still, for a brief moment under semi-civilian rule, hope bloomed. SIM cards that once cost $2,500 dropped to $1. Roads were repaired. Electricity became more consistent. Mobile phones and internet gave the people a voice. But even in those years, the regime worked quietly to divide us. In the early 2010s, they opened borders in Rakhine State, encouraging migration to manipulate voting blocs. Then, they incited hatred against those same migrants, weaponizing ethnicity and religion. In a deeply Buddhist society that had long coexisted peacefully with Muslims and Christians, they created a new monster nationalist extremism. Military-backed monks like Warathu spread hate speech, dehumanizing Rohingya Muslims. In 2017, this culminated in a military-led genocide in Rakhine State. Entire villages were burned, women were raped, thousands killed. Over 700,000 Rohingya fled to Bangladesh. The world demanded accountability. An International Criminal Court, ICC, case was opened, but Suu Kyi, now state councilor, faced an impossible choice. To publicly condemn the military was to invite political and personal destruction. She chose silence, hoping to eventually reform the military from within. For this, her international reputation plummeted, but many Burmese understood the trap she was in. Then came the 2020 election. Suu Kyi's party won in a landslide. Again, the military was humiliated. On February 1, 2021, they staged a coup. Mass protests erupted nationwide. Young people, doctors, civil servants, factory workers, all took to the streets to protect their fragile democracy. The military responded with unspeakable brutality. They shot children. They burned people alive. They tortured to death. They beheaded civilians and displayed their severed heads as warnings. Because their unspoken motto has always been clear. If you are not one of us, you deserve to die. Even if you are a child. They taught us silence. Now we speak. They taught us fear. Now we fight. They tried to divide us. Now we stand as one. For the first time in our history, Myanmar's people united, across religion, ethnicity, language, and region. Buddhists, Muslims, Christians, urban professionals, and rural farmers. We stood shoulder to shoulder. We supported the National Unity Government, NUG, a government in exile, funded by ordinary people. The world's only truly crowd-funded government and resistance force. No foreign power sustains us. We do it with our own earnings, our own sweat, our own sacrifice. Then came more suffering, floods, earthquakes, entire regions devastated. And the military? They blocked humanitarian aid to areas controlled by the resistance. Survivors were left digging with bare hands through rubble. Donated food and medicine were looted and sold on military markets. China, Russia, and Thailand continued supplying arms and diplomatic cover to the regime. Airstrikes followed, often targeting schools, clinics, and civilians. Just last week, dozens of children were killed in the Buthodong massacre. Still, we endure. We bury the dead and feed the living. We crowdfund drones. We build our own schools and clinics. We smuggle textbooks to children hiding in forests. Because even if the world stays silent, we will not. We remember our monks, our nurses, our teachers, our children. We remember every brother and sister taken from us, not as victims, but as reasons to rise. They destroyed our morals. They sabotaged our education. They tried to bury our empathy. But from that soil, something new is growing. A people who have tasted freedom and will never go back. We were taught to obey. Now we resist. We were taught to fear. Now we fight. We were taught to stay silent. Now we speak. And we will keep speaking until justice is done. So much of our world is shaped by force, by those who demand power, take control, and punish difference. But sometimes, the most transformative moments come not from the powerful, but from the kind. Not from laws, but from a quiet decision in a queue. That little girl, standing first, choosing to step aside, reminded me what it means to be human. She didn't lose her place. She found her strength. And maybe that's where rebuilding starts. Not just in governments or protests. Not just in policy papers or UN meetings. But in everyday choices of empathy over entitlement, of courage over silence, of equity over rigid equality. Burma's story, my story, is one of loss and survival. But it's also a story of rising again, with memory in our bones and hope in our hands. We don't need a revolution to begin with fireworks. We just need one child in a queue who looks back and steps aside. Because when we remember how to care for the person behind us, we just might find a better way forward for all of us.